questions are in similar vein. The first question is from Chip Thomas from Jupiter. What would we have to do to convince you to enter the presidential race? The second question from Jimmy Vizzi and Carol Hurst of Palm Beach Shores. Will you run in 2012 and save us and the country? We give you permission.
No, they weren't pre-selected. The most important thing is this. I won a congressional race, and my responsibility to the people here in Congressional District 22. And my father taught me a very important maxim growing up in Georgia. And I'm sorry, I have to laugh. The lady has pink tape over her mouth. It's kind of funny. But my father gave me a very important maxim. He said, never read your own press and never drink your own tub of water. So I stay pretty focused on being a good congressional representative, and that's the most important thing right now.
The next question is regarding employment, labor. Michael Duval of Fort Lauderdale asks, what are your thoughts of the National Labor Relations Board and their decision regarding the Boeing factory in South Carolina?
I think that's a terrible decision, and if you all did not pay attention to that, what the National Labor Relations Board is trying to prevent is a private sector company from relocating to a right-to-work state. And you have to understand, Florida is a right-to-work state. So, we cannot have these type of impediments that will not allow Americans to be hired and for Americans to get out there and do their job, do work. And you know what? I want to see us producing aircraft here for our men and women that are out there. I don't want to see a ship to France or Europe. So that's a very bad decision.
Regarding taxes, Joyce Brown of Green Acres asks, why not tax the most wealthy in this country their fair share and leave the working class and middle class with the benefits they have paid for and earned?
Well, first of all, the thing is fair share. I mean, that's a very objective thing. I mean, how do we define fair share? Right now, those top two tax brackets are paying upwards to about 45 to 50% of the taxes in the United States of America. And when you look at the progressive tax code system that we have, on tax day, you have 47% of wage earning households that did not pay federal income taxes. So you basically have 53% that are paying for the rest of this country. Now, let's give a little bit of history here. When you go back and you look at Presidents Coolidge and Harding, and we talk about the marginal tax rates for the upper brackets, they brought those marginal tax rates down to 24%. And you saw a percentage of revenues as per GDP increase coming from those tax brackets. But then following them, you had Hoover and you had Roosevelt, who took it from 24%, they brought it up to 83%. And you can understand exactly what happened to that percentage of revenues. Even John F. Kennedy, when he took over as president, he saw those marginal tax rate at 91%. And he said, we have to at least cut it down 20% to 71%. The thing is very simple, and I just talked to you about it. Small business owners operate at a personal income tax rate. And if we're talking about setting the conditions for people to get hired and people to get back to work, the last thing you want to do is start talking about raising taxes in the situation in which we find ourselves. You're not going to grow the economy. It is not, once again, it is not a revenue problem that we have at the federal government level. It's the spending problem. And the thing is this. Let me ask everyone one simple question. Why would you trust this federal government with more American taxpayer dollars? Do you think we're going to be fiscally responsible? So that's the thing. The surplus in 2000, let's talk about how do you create a surplus. You create a surplus very simple. You can have tax cuts, but you can't grow government at the same time. And that's one of the great things that Bill Clinton did, along with Newt Gingrich. They did not grow government. And also, remember about welfare reform. Welfare reform came under Bill Clinton. Okay? You talk about services. Now, the failure of George W. Bush, you cannot have tax cuts and grow government at the same time. That's how you take a surplus and you turn it into a deficit. But the thing is now, over the past 3 years, we have seen those deficits absolutely explode. The largest annual deficit of George W. Bush was $400 billion. That was the largest annual deficit. In this month of February of this year, we had $223 billion of deficit spending in the shortest month of the year. And I already told you about the 3 years that we've had as far as deficit spending. So I agree that the thing that we have to do is we have to take care of the spending in Washington, D.C. That's the bottom line.
Okay, also regarding taxes, Valerie T. Ellis of Boca Raton asks, at your last town hall in Palm Beach, Representative West, you mentioned that the upper 1% deserve a tax break because they drive the economy. Where would they go without the other 99%?
Well, I don't know where they would go. And it's not about having a tax break. I mean, we're talking about keeping tax rates where they are. Now, this is another thing that I believe in. I believe in the flat tax. I believe that across the board, 15 to 70%, 15 to 17% tax rate, and the only deduction you get is children. Okay, that's it. Because I think the most important thing is, you know, across the board for all Americans, infuse money into their pockets. And I think that is the way that we will have long-term sustainable economic growth. You know, the thing that I hear people shouting about, it has never worked. It has not worked in this country. If you're talking about top-down driven government type of economy, it has never worked. And we can sit down and we can talk about it anyway, okay? And the exact same thing, you can talk, if you go back and you study the Secretary of Treasury for President Roosevelt, I think it was Henry Morgenthau, and he will tell you that everything that we did failed as far as getting us out of the Depression. Every single one of their economic policies, and that's the truth. Now, the lady there said, bring the troops back home. You know, I have been overseas, you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I do not agree with nation building or occupation style warfare, because it does drain down your economic resources. But I also know this, that we have a very vicious, a very determined, very focused enemy that is out there. And if we don't develop our United States military for this 21st century fight, then we're going to miss out. And this enemy will continue to grow in the sanctuaries in which he has established himself. The number one thing that we should be doing is denying this enemy sanctuary. We should be cutting off his flow of men, material, and financial support. The longer that you stay bogged down in some of these theaters of operations, the more that your men and women become a target. And that's something that I don't want to see happen. And that's why I'm going back over to Afghanistan in June.
Right, the next question is rather lengthy. I'm going to read it anyway. Judith Kraft of Briny Breezes. It's regarding the state budget. The state money should not be cut from the federal budget, especially for Department of Children and Families, since it is the only agency concerned with the well-being of the neediest people, those who have income problems, need Medicaid, food stamps. The application online is unfriendly, very stressful, and there's no human contact to help you with questions. When mistakes are made, they can't be corrected online or by group into the main office. Services are denied with no recourse. Privatizing it has made it too fragmented. The people who fall through the cracks have to survive on their own. I am a social worker with a grown daughter who has had mental health problems, which have disabled her for the past 2.5 years, and she was denied Social Security, disability income, therefore ineligible for Medicaid because she has no disability. A fair hearing, which may take 1 year or more in Palm Beach County, has failed. She can't afford this. Is there some way you can address this situation?
Well, I mean, county and state level issues like that, the only thing I can do is say come in and sit down with people on our staff, and we'll see what we can do in connecting you with your state representative, state senator, and do the best we can. But, you know, once again, it comes back to prioritizing what are the functions of the federal government so that we can make sure that we keep all of our Americans at a certain standard of living and a certain standard of life. And I think one of the key things we have to do with the federal government is realize, you know, where do we support the state so that they can take the lead, make sure that they have the right funding and revenues to be able to take care of their citizens. I don't think that we can do as good a job up there at the 30,000 foot level as the states can be able to do. So whoever you are, please come back and see someone from our office. We'll get your information. We'll do the best we can to help.
Regarding the federal budget, Diane DeWolf, why is the Department of Agriculture spending money to photograph children's school lunches in San Antonio to measure their calories?
I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that I'm responsible for, but taking pictures of school lunches is not one of them. All I can do is I'll go back and talk to my friends on the Committee on Agriculture, and I'll ask them what they're doing. Hey, look, let me tell you something that you all have to do as citizens out here. You all have to hold us responsible and accountable. I mean, it's very easy to track where the spending is. It's very easy to track some of these wasteful things that are happening in Washington, D.C. And you need to be contacting people on these various and sundry different committees and let them know what are you doing. Well, I got to tell you, there are no earmarks. And let me tell you, when you watched us go through the National Defense Authorization Act, once upon a time, everyone would come and say, I need $25 million to go to this military base, which is in my district. That didn't happen this time. And even at 3 o'clock in the morning, that hearing room was still packed with people that were watching us to see what we were doing. And they were going over those amendments that we brought forth. So you're not seeing earmarks up there. Earmarks is a bad word. Well, we shall keep doing that. Absolutely.
From